I'm Kevin Blakely. I'm a zookeeper here at Seneca Park Zoo. This is my little buddy Gizmo, and today we're going to talk to you about African penguins. Now, let's be honest. How many of you knew there were penguins in Africa? Most of the time when we see penguins, we see them standing on snow and ice. The truth is, there are about 18 different species of penguins, and only about 5 of them are found in really cold climates. Gizmo here is found on the southern tip of Africa. You will find penguins in South America. There are even penguins on the Galapagos Islands right on the equator. It's just about as warm as you can get. So let's talk a little bit about some of the adaptations that allow them to tolerate the heat. You'll notice around his eyes, there's a pink area. When he gets really hot, that area gets dark pink. These are actually blood vessels that are very close to the surface, and it allows him to shed heat, a little bit like a radiator. They also have these pink areas in their feet. Those are also blood vessels that are close to the surface. They can stand in the water, stand in the surf, and it helps to cool them off. So a lot of people often wonder, why do penguins have this coloration? No, it's not that they're getting ready to go out. This is actually a form of camouflage. It's called counter shading, and you'll see it in a lot of marine animals and also seabirds. You'll see it in sharks, whales. If you imagine imagine Gizmo floating on the surface, and you're a shark who's looking for a penguin for dinner. The white on his chest will actually disappear into the reflection of the surface and into the sky above, and it makes it very hard for him to see when he's floating on the surface. If he dives down, he's chasing some fish, and you look down, all you're going to see is the black on his back. And so he disappears into the depths of the ocean. Again, it's a form of camouflage while he's in the ocean. So here at the Seneca Park Zoo, we currently have 30 African penguins. Over the years, we've hatched 113 here. Now, if you do the math, 113, we have 30. Obviously, we've sent a lot of penguins elsewhere. We actually have penguins at 30 other facilities around North America. We've actually sent penguins as far away as Hawaii. Now, you might wonder how this all happens, moving penguins from one facility to another. They are controlled by a species survival plan. We refer to that as SSP. You'll see that around the zoo with a lot of different animals. This is a central organization that tracks the genetics of all the penguins in North America, and they determine, they'll recommend breeding pairs based on genetics, and they also facilitate the movement between one facility and another. We do not sell. There's no buying and selling of penguins. That's long gone. All AZA facilities work together, and we share birds. So we'll send some birds out. We might get some other birds in just for breeding purposes. Now, I mentioned they're part of a species survival plan. The African penguin is, in fact, an endangered species. Sadly, over the last 100 years, we've lost about 98% of them. There are only 2% left in the wild. There are a number of reasons for this. Some of these reasons were in the past and thankfully have been addressed. And sadly, there are still some issues that they're trying to work on in South Africa. At one time, their eggs were collected as a delicacy in South Africa, and we're talking up to 60,000 a year, and they did this for a dozen years. If you do the math, that's a lot of penguins. It's a lot of penguins that didn't hatch. Obviously devastating for a number of years, and it's taken a long time to come back from that. Also, these are birds. They actually poop a lot. There's a shock. This poop they refer to as guano. And if you imagine millions of these birds living on islands for thousands of years, that guano actually builds up to be pretty deep. We're talking 6 to 10 feet in spots. It sounds disgusting. The truth is, it makes a really good nesting material for them. When it dries out, it kind of has the consistency of crumbly peat moss. They could burrow into it. It makes a really good nest. It insulates them from the heat and actually provides protection for their eggs and their young. Unfortunately, they also found that it made really good fertilizer. And so for a lot of years, they went out and cleared off all the islands of the guano. It was obviously devastating to the nests that were there at the time, but because this took thousands of years to build up, it really changed the way these penguins had to nest from then on. Unfortunately, now they're having to nest out in the open, out in the rocks, trying to find brush to hide under. It really has opened them up to a lot of predation and also heat stress, and has really reduced the number of eggs that are hatched. Also in that area, overfishing is a huge problem. These guys eat sardines, anchovies. Unfortunately, so do we, and we're way better at catching them than they are. So the overfishing, unfortunately, is causing them to have to go farther and farther to find their fish. Maybe not such an issue for an adult. These are seabirds. They can spend months at sea, but when they're feeding their chicks, one will stay on the eggs or stay with the chicks. The other will go out, find the fish, fill themselves up. They have to bring it back. They're going to regurgitate it up to feed their chicks. The farther they have to go, the farther they have to bring it back, the less they have to feed their chicks. So overfishing does affect chick survival as well. And as you probably heard, South Africa is a major shipping area. There's a lot of small islands, a lot of ships, consequently a lot of oil spills. There's been a couple major ones that have made the news, but realistically there's a lot of them that take place all the time, whether it be from a shipwreck or from just a ship cleaning out its build. So when these guys get oiled, their feathers lose their waterproofing, and consequently, they're subject to hypothermia. It forces them out of the water, which means they can't eat. Now they're subject to starvation. They try and clean themselves. They ingest the oil. It's poisonous. They'll get sick from that. Realistically, there is no... realistically, when a penguin gets oiled, it's a death sentence unless there's human intervention to clean them. And then the last problem that we're seeing, this is more of a new problem, is the problem of the chick seasons and their molting seasons overlapping. I'm going to put him down for a second. He's getting a little antsy here. What happens is at the beginning of the year, there's a chick season. They hatch their eggs. And then at some point, they go into the molting season. When these guys molt, they go through what's called a catastrophic molt. They will lose all their feathers at once. When they do this, they can't go in the ocean to eat. So at that time, they have to stay on land. So what they do is they put on a lot of weight ahead of time, kind of gorge themselves, and then they can live off that fat on land while their new feathers come in. Unfortunately, because of climate change, because of a lot of storms earlier in the year, it's pushed back their breeding season. And then what happens is they have chicks that they have to feed, and they're starting to go into their molt. Once they lose their feathers, they can't go out into the ocean to get the fish. They can't feed their chicks, and chicks are literally starving to death in the nest while the parents are standing right next to them because they can't go out to feed them. So thankfully, there is an organization in South Africa on the front lines that are helping out with a number of these problems. Whenever there's an oil spill, they're first on the front line. They're actually created out of necessity, because of an oil spill, no one was really doing anything, and they started taking them in. There was an oil spill at one time where they actually cleaned 20,000 penguins. I want you to think about that for a minute, 20,000 penguins. It takes generally 4 times cleaning a bird to get it to clean. It's a lot of manpower needed, a lot of time. It's a major undertaking. This organization now is also addressing the problem of the chick molt overlap. Their rangers go out, they identify what chicks are not being cared for or even abandoned eggs, and they will bring them into their facility. They will feed these chicks and raise them up and then re-release them back into the wild. This organization that I'm talking about is called SANCOB. It actually stands for the Southern African Foundation for the Conservation of Coastal Birds. That's a mouthful, and I don't expect anybody to remember it, but if you're interested in helping out with them, if you Google African penguin, it's generally the first thing that comes up on top. It's a really great organization. The zoo here supports them financially and also through manpower. I actually personally got to go to South Africa in December to help out, and I spent most of my time feeding these chicks that were abandoned, growing them up and then taking them out and re-releasing them. It was a very good experience for me. It's great to see that work being done on the front line. I love this organization, and I hope everybody will support them. Look them up online. If you want, you can just make a donation. You can also, if you want, you can adopt one of these chicks. They let you name it, and then they'll send you information and tell you when it was released. It's an awesome organization. So while the zoo is closed, I hope you guys are enjoying some of these videos that we're sharing. I just want you guys to take care of yourself. We'll take care of the animals, and we'll see you back here as soon as the zoo opens up. So if you guys got any questions for me about African penguins, feel free to put them in the comments, and I'll do my best to try and answer them, or someone from the zoo will. See you real soon. Right, Gizmo? We'll see you real soon. Good boy.